G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today let's talk about clear basing. Clear basing is the latest fad to come along in this hobby. What is it? Why is it potentially a problem? Why does it receive so much backlash? What could the fallout be? Look, I've tried to be objective here, but I just couldn't manage it. What I've done instead is objectively done my best to answer these sort of questions, and then I'll give my opinion at the end. So, first of all, what is clear basing? Well, it's the replacement of a traditional plastic or resin base for a miniature with a clear one instead. Generally, this is made from laser cut acrylic. The idea behind it is that the miniatures are no longer locked into a particular style of base, such as a snow base or a desert base, that kind of thing, and therefore they will potentially match any table they are placed on. So you won't get weird things like snow on a desert table or, sand on an Arctic table or something like that. That's all good and well, but why is this a problem? Well, this is hard to say. Certainly, there are aesthetic reasons. It isn't just as pretty as a normal base. It requires miniatures to be attached in often messy ways because things like 2-part clear epoxy resin aren't used by many people. Instead, a lot of people who clear base use super glue, and since they don't pin the miniatures, they just cake the glue on and you end up with frosted effects around the miniature's feet. Furthermore, as the bases are clear, any grit or gravel which scratches or damages the base really stands out, and it just takes away from the completed miniature in just minor ways. Also, the completely flat underside means that the placement of models is actually somewhat harder than with a regular base, as things like protrusions and sloping tables that the models may sit on top of, well, they kind of just slide off them thanks to the smooth underside. And this is something that they also share with resin basing, so don't think I'm going easy on other bases here. So, why does it receive backlash? What's the fallout? Well, boy, here's the nuts and bolts of it, and I'll use a totally hypothetical example here. If you have two functionally identical armies at an event, identical to the smallest detail, the paint quality is perfectly matching, but one is based traditionally and the other is based clear, how are the painting scores worked out? Both are based. But if you say that the clear basing doesn't count, well, the guy who did it is going to ask why the hell not. After all, Games Workshop put skimmers on clear bases for decades. It's legitimate and done for a reason. If you do give him a point for his basing, then the guy who put all the effort into basing his bases correctly is going to ask, well, why the fuck does this potato get the same score as me when he couldn't even be bothered to put the same level of work into the miniature? You now have a catch-22 scenario, where both the intended parties end up pissed, no matter which way you cut it. You might as well say, let's have 2 levels of paint, 2 levels of points for the painting here, for people who put in the additional effort. But that isn't going to fix anything either, because the clear base guy is simply going to say, well, hang on, I made these bases for a reason, and it's unfair that I can't get full points because this is quite literally the extent of what I may do with the miniatures. Basically, they get shitty no matter what you do in this scenario. To further illustrate the point, if a clear and unpainted base is acceptable, well, why not just any unpainted base? If you're saying that the player chose to use said base as it is the effect that they have in mind, well, you have to apply that logically to people who just put their miniatures onto black Games Workshop bases straight from the box. If you don't, you're applying a double standard. As for the hate, let me give you my own opinion. Now keep in mind that opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. But opinions are not a dick. You don't have to take them hard. I fucking despise clear bases. I recently asked all my salty boys and my Outer Circle Facebook community to send me the very best clear base miniatures and armies they could find. Do you know what? I only had one person send me anything I would remotely call anything higher than a tabletop standard. From my experience, every army which I've seen clear based is a gigantic pile of shit, exemplifying the very worst quality miniature painting. I can only conclude from that the clear bases are being used less for the effect, which is laughable in and of itself, but due to the lazy nature of the people creating the miniatures. They simply paint a miniature in the fastest possible way and glue it to a clear base because somehow that's okay. They like to pretend that it somehow now has the quality of an army, which, even if not painted well, at least had their bases done. If you're going to not give a fuck when it comes to your miniature, why not just leave it as grey plastic? It would be less insulting to me somehow. Is this harsh? Yes it is. My opinion is very harsh on the matter. But I have a standard for what I deem to be acceptable hobby for me. And it more or less boils down to what you see in the miniature magazine publications. That's the baseline. That's something you want to strive for. If you get something close to that, I'll be fine with whatever you do. If you go above and beyond that, I'll be very happy. Not everyone can paint a golden demon standard. Not everyone can kit bash a decent miniature. But this is a hobby, and like any activity we do, we have some standards. If you play golf, you know that there's a set of limits and boundaries on what's acceptable, on what club you use, on what you do when you actually play on the field, that kind of thing. If you race cars, the same thing, you're limited by engine capacity and things like that, and there are safety standards you must adhere to. There's always little rules and causes and things that must be done, and they're there for a reason. And this hobby is the same thing. If you are well below the standard, and believe me, it's a subjective standard, but there is one, it's not the community's responsibility to drop down to your level and meet you there and say, hey, good on you for doing something terrible. It's on you to actually rise up and improve yourself as best you can. Even then, I will cut people a lot of slack if I can tell they're trying. But literally, so many people who clear base, when I ask them, reply to me, oh, I just wanted to quickly make an army. Or worse, I just do it to trigger people. These people are showing a contempt for this hobby, and their fellow gamers, and with that last statement especially, I just want to trigger people. Honestly, it's statements like that that make people like me have such a hardline stance towards the clear basing. So anyway, with all the nastiness aside, what's the solution? Simple, just ban the fucking things. Or tell people who are going to events that clear bases will receive a painting penalty if you're scoring painting at the event. And if they've got a problem with that, simply tell them, you get no points because you didn't fully paint your miniature. Is it harsh? Yes. Is it fair? Well, I'd say yes too, because at least you're giving them clear boundaries, and you're not going to penalise all the people who went to the effort of fully completing their miniatures, and I think that's what it comes down to most of all. You see, those of us who go out, we put the effort in, and we're not talking huge amounts of effort here. It's not hard to glue some sand to a miniature, use some textured paints, that kind of thing on the base. But the people who went to that effort, we shouldn't treat their armies as if they are somehow equal in quality to the people who could only be fucked placing their miniature onto a piece of clear plastic. I'm sorry, that's not on. This is an infuriating topic. Something that I'm making a video on, even though for ages I said I wouldn't, because I just knew that it was going to cause me grief, and I've got no doubt that I'm probably going to cop it down in the comments from some people, but I mean, nothing I've seen has led me to believe that clear basing is anything more than lazy or poor hobbyists just trying to get out of doing a step that they can't be fucked doing. Oh, basing's so much effort. Oh, I can't be stuffed. I know, I'll just glue them to some clear plastic. Zero effort, zero work. And that's just depressing. Also, it's a bit silly when you see miniatures which have like rocks or dead bodies that they're standing on, and then they put them on a clear base. All of a sudden you have like half a dead torso sticking out of a clear base, or random rocks which just don't work. I'm sorry, it just looks retarded. Anyway, I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. This is one angry video, and I'll see you all next time.